What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel, and it is time to kick off my 2024 college football schedule preview and projected record series. And we kick them off with the Michigan Wolverines, the team that, of course, won the national championship last season. And before we preview their schedule for 2024 and also give you their projected record for 2024, let's take a look at what Michigan did back in 2023. So you look at Michigan last year, they obviously went undefeated in 2023, finished 12-0 in the regular season. We're basing this off of the regular season record, but if you count the Big Ten championship and also the playoff semifinal and the national championship, this team finished undefeated with a perfect 15-0 record. So again, they went 12-0 last year in 2023. And my projections and predictions last year for Michigan in 2023, my projection for them was 11-1, and then my prediction for them was also 11-1. So I was one game off of officially, making them go undefeated and everything, but this team went 12-0. So that's a look at the projections and predictions last year for this Michigan team. There was a schedule last year in 2023 for the Wolverines. They didn't really have a tough non-conference schedule, not really anybody that tough in the non-conference. East Carolina, UNLV, and Bowling Green. They played those, three non-conference games to kick off the year. And then they obviously took care of business in the rest of their Big Ten schedule. Obviously had to win those key games against Penn State on the road and Ohio State at home in order to win the Big Ten East and also get into the college football playoff. And so Michigan, not losing a single game at all last season, so they finished 12-0 again in 2023. Let's now look ahead to 2024. Here is the official schedule for 2024 for the Michigan Wolverines. And before we look at, every single game here on this schedule, let's take a look at who Michigan will play in the non-conference. No divisions, of course, in the Big Ten this season, but this is who they will play in the non-conference. They'll play Fresno State. They'll play Texas here at home, and then Arkansas State. So they do get two group of five teams here in the non-conference, Fresno State and Arkansas State. But this game against Texas here in the non-conference is a big one here, especially in the week number 2 of the college football season. Texas obviously going to be a very good team. That this is not a Big 12 team anymore. You look at Texas; they're obviously going to be going to the SEC next year. And this is a very interesting non-conference game in 2024. Like I said, I'm looking forward to this game. I've always been kind of wanting to see a Michigan versus Texas matchup. This is also a Texas team that went to the college football playoff last season. So you get 3 non-conference games here for Michigan, all at home. But like I said, that Texas game is definitely going to be their toughest non-conference game. And again, the non-conference schedule is not too bad for Michigan, but like I said, that Texas game makes it a little bit tough. But other than that, the non-conference schedule is not too bad. Let's now go back to the schedule here for 2024. Let's go game by game here and preview each and every single individual game. So Michigan kicks off on August 31st against Fresno State. Fresno State, not a bad group of 5 team. They'll kick them off there with August 31st matchup. And then they'll play Texas here, of course, on September the 7th. Again, that's a big-time non-conference game here in week number 2. This is kind of one of the biggest non-conference games, I believe, in 2024 coming up. It's a home game here for Michigan. Arkansas State after that on September the 14th. And then they'll kick things off here in Big Ten play with USC on September 21st. Yes, USC, not a non-conference game. Obviously, they're a Big Ten opponent now, so they get USC at home. And then they'll play Minnesota here at home on September 28th. So you get 5 straight home games to start out the year of 2024, and you obviously play all home games in the month of September. That's a huge win here for this Michigan team, but it's also a very possibility that they could start out 5-0 and maybe 4-1, depending on what the Texas game happens and everything. So they get to the month of October, they'll play Washington on the road. October the 5th, that's a rematch from last year's championship. Washington just lost their head coach, it seems like, so I think, they're going to be obviously taking a step back from last year. And then they'll play Illinois on the road. They get a bye week before playing Illinois on the road on October 19th. So you got back-to-back road games here with Washington and Illinois on the schedule. Then it's rival Michigan State here on October 26th. This is a rival game. You never know what can happen. I always look forward to this matchup here between Michigan and Michigan State. The Spartans, though, were not very good last season, so maybe this game will not be very entertaining this year. Then they get to the month of November. They'll obviously play Oregon at home. This should be a really good Oregon team, a very explosive offense coming over and everything, and especially Dylan Gabriel at quarterback and everything, the transfer from Oklahoma. And Dan Lanning has done a really nice job there for the Ducks. And then it's Indiana on the road after that on November the 9th. And then they get a bye week after Indiana. They'll play Northwestern here on November 23rd, and then they obviously close things out here with Ohio State here on the road in the game November the 30th. So that's, of course, in rivalry weekend. They have beaten the Buckeyes now for the last 3 straight years. So that's the schedule for Michigan in 2024, and I think your toughest games here on this schedule when I look at it is definitely Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State. You at least get Texas and Oregon both at home, and then you have to play the Buckeyes on the road. I don't think this schedule is too tough. If you have to play Oregon and Texas both on the road, that would just be a brutal schedule and everything. But other than that, I don't think the schedule is really all that tough. That Washington game is a little bit tough, but Washington, I think, is definitely going to be taking a step back after just losing their head coach, and they also obviously lost Michael Penix as well. So that's the schedule for 2024. Let's now give you my projection here for this Michigan team, and this is the scale that I'll be using here for these projections and everything for every single team that we're studying. If it's a 1% game, that game is obviously going to be in the red. These are games where Michigan has no chance in. 20% games, these are games where Michigan will be about a couple touchdowns of underdogs. 40% game in the yellow, these are games where Michigan will be about an underdog in. You're not going to see any of these games on here in the red or orange or yellow. Pretty much Michigan's going to be favored in almost every single one of their games. 50-50 games, those will stay in the white. Games that can go either way. 60% games in the purple, these are games where Michigan will be favored by at least a touchdown. 80% games, a couple of touchdowns in the blue. And then green games here, these are the games where Michigan should take care of business in at 99%. And that's what we're going to start with. We're going to start with the green games here. Games that Michigan should be at least favored by more than 3 touchdowns. And I think you got 3 of them on this schedule. You got Fresno State, Arkansas State, and Indiana. Obviously, you got your 2, cupcake games here on the schedule with Fresno State and Arkansas State. I think they take care of business in both of those games. Fresno State could be a game that could probably be at 90%. Fresno State's not a bad group of 5 team, but I still think Michigan otherwise will be like a big favorite in that game. I don't really see them struggling in that game either. And they should be able to take care of business against Arkansas State. And then Indiana on the road, I was very close to putting this one in the blue, but Indiana, it's kind of like a rebuild mode down there at the university and everything. They just fired their head coach from last year as well. So I think Michigan will be a big favorite in this Big Ten game against Indiana. So those are the games where I think Michigan will obviously be favored by more than 3 touchdowns. Let's now go to the games now where Michigan will be favored by a couple of touchdowns in the blue at 80%, and it's almost the majority of their schedule here. It's USC, Minnesota, Illinois, Michigan State, and Northwestern. Illinois here on the road, I think I could probably put that game in the purple, but based off of where they were last year, they didn't make it to a bowl game, so I'm going to keep that one in the blue. USC, I know that should be a game that's in the purple, but if it was on the road, I would definitely put it in the purple, but based off of where USC finished last season, I'm not going to put this game in the purple just because for that reason. And again, Caleb Williams is gone, so I think that's really like a huge loss here for this USC team. And plus, I wasn't really impressed with their defense last year either. But Minnesota, Michigan State, and Northwestern, these are games that, I think Minnesota and Northwestern are pretty good, decent opponents, but in Michigan State, it's kind of like a rebuild mode here for this program as well. I don't think Michigan State's going to be all that good as of right now when I look at them from last year as well. So these 5 games in the blue, I think Michigan will be favored by at least a couple touchdowns. Now we go to the games in the purple, 60% games where I think Michigan will be favored by at least a touchdown. And I think you got just one of them on here. I think it's Washington on the road, so it's a rematch from last year's national championship. When I look at this game now, I'm really close to putting it in the blue just because Washington looks like they're going to drop off a lot now because they lost Michael Penix at quarterback, and they also lost Dylan Johnson in the backfield. They also lost their star wide receiver as well, and they also lost their head coach. So it's going to be like not like a rebuild for Washington, but just like a brand new start for that team and, the coaching era and everything. So Washington on the road, I think you can at least favor Michigan here by at least a touchdown because of that reason. So I think Michigan will be favored even though it's on the road at Washington. If Washington's head coach was still here, I would definitely put that as a 50-50 game, but I'm going to favor Michigan in this one just because of the result of the national championship game as well. So I think it's the only game that Michigan will be favored at least by a touchdown. And then the rest of the games that you're seeing here in the white, Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State, I think these are your 50-50 games here for Michigan. Texas, obviously, a big non-conference game there in week number 2. Going to go up against, it's a Texas offense and everything. Steve Sarkisian has done a really good job for that Texas football program. And then you also got Quinn Ewers coming back at quarterback, will be huge there for this Texas team. And then for Oregon, Dan Lanning has really recruited pretty well. This is a tough game to call, but the good news is that Michigan gets this game at home. I'd still think it would either way be a 50-50 game if it was on the road. It would be absolutely brutal, though, if they had to play on the road at Oregon and also on the road at Texas. That's what made the schedule really tough, but, playing Texas and Oregon is very comfortable here at home for Michigan, and then, of course, Ohio State on the road. Obviously, that's a rival game and everything. That's really pretty much a 50-50 game every single year. And, again, Ohio State has been manhandled by Michigan the last 3 years. Will they finally end that streak? It's kind of hard to tell, but Michigan is losing a lot of talent this year. We'll see how that game goes in 2024. So now let's give you my projected record for this Michigan team. Again, not my official prediction. This is simply just a projection based on how tough the schedule really is for Michigan. So you count the green games as wins, you count the blue games as wins, and also you kind of, you kind of split that purple game with Washington, and also you count those 50-50 games as well. You get an overall projection here for this Michigan team. The overall projected record for this Michigan team comes out to be 11-1. So again, my official projection for this Michigan team comes out to be 11-1 for 2024. So same projection as last year. And again, when I look at this schedule, you get Texas and Oregon both at home, and you also get, Ohio State on the road. That could be very well likely their loss there, out of those 3 50-50 games. But I think they can probably, win like 1 out of those 3 games. Let's say they split with Texas and Oregon. Let's say if they lose to Texas at home and then they beat Oregon at home, and then they probably beat Ohio State on the road. But let's say if they beat Texas at home and then they lose to Oregon at home and then beat Ohio State, it's very well likely that they can go 11-1 with that type of, 50-50 games here. But it would really shock me if, Michigan goes like probably 12-0 because I think they'll lose at least one of these games. And then, of course, 11-1 probably would be their mid-case scenario. And then 10-2, maybe their worst-case scenario, but it would also really shock me if this team went 9-3, especially for a team that, won the national championship last year. So Michigan, this is my official projected record here, my very early projected record here for this Michigan team, 11-1 in 2024. So let me guys know what you think about this Michigan team. What do you think their projected record is in 2024? Give me your best case scenario for this Michigan team and also worst case scenario down in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports channel.